Hello, ladies. I am so glad to be back, and I'm honored that you would come, and I hope you get a lot done while you listen to Homemaking Radio today. I invented this for people who just needed something to listen to or someone to listen to while they went about their daily work at home. Now, in saying all that, I want to remind you not to copy me and not to say it's because I said it, but make sure that the things I say actually work with your family. Maybe they won't. Everybody's different. Everyone's in a different circumstance. This is just for your entertainment. And also, some of you have expressed some concern about what will happen to my videos. And so I'm just saying, if you'd like to download everything, I don't know how to do it, but on your device, if you'd like to somehow take my videos and for your own personal use, or create discs out of them for yourself, that's fine with me if you want to preserve them, or if you want to somehow save them in case something happens that I don't have them, that's fine with me too. And because we never know what's going to happen, I've got them on my device, but they're also on YouTube. And so beyond that, I haven't done anything business-wise with them. I haven't found anything, and I haven't had time really to deal with it. So today, while you get ready, and I want to emphasize getting ready because years ago I used to get up and do all my work, and I think, I'm going to do all this laundry, and I'm going to get the meals done and the kitchen done and do all the sweeping, make all the beds. Then I'm going to get a shower and get dressed because I'll just, be all hot and sweaty and everything. And I had to stop doing it that way because when I began homeschooling, I realized that my children needed a better example and a start for the day. And the message I wanted to give was, this work is worthy of dolling yourself up for, of getting dressed for, of putting on a clean apron, of getting a feeling of dignity for. How many of you just look at your work and then you slump? If you got up and fixed yourself up, maybe you wouldn't do that so much. So if you will do that, maybe while you're doing that, you can listen to me just a little bit longer. And I have a number of things to show you today. I also, if any of you, there's about 5 of you have sent me Christmas cards, and I am so sorry I have not answered. I have such a problem with that. For 10 years, I've been rarely able to really keep up with Christmas for some reason. I have 4 birthdays in Christmas and other things going on at that area in that time span, and somehow I've never been able to get my act together. But my next video, I will give you a Christmas card until I can get caught up, and I will try to catch up. And I bought the kind of cards that I could send for a few more months afterwards. And so today I want to share with you something that I bought at the Dollar Tree. I love trays. Besides teacups, I love trays, but they had these in all colors. They were in purple and green and turquoise, and they're very, you can't bend them. They're very sturdy. And I thought for homemaking, instead of getting a cup of tea and just taking the teacup somewhere to sit down with it, or whatever room I was in, I thought it might be better to put it on a tray and, so that if it spills, it just spills into the tray. And so what I did is I put a paper napkin on the tray just to protect it a little bit, maybe in case the saucer was hot, and do this and make it actually more dignified. And I looked up some old paintings from the 17 and 1800s of people carrying trays with tea on them. Thought they were so charming. And every room I have has a place to make a refreshment, hot or cold drink, and has the cups in them. And I always thought it would be nice to, when I made a cup of tea, put it on a tray on a table beside me instead of just the cup. So that's just some kind of extra thing that I wanted to show you today because it makes it less mundane, and I think we need to make the home something that is worthy of our attention and make it fancy. Now, in our ladies' Bible class, I have one every Thursday. I'm going to stealth sip here a bit because my throat is kind of dry. And I have something to drink here. And so every Thursday for the last year, I have been taking the first 15 minutes of the class and doing a study for them on, or they look up, I give them all the scriptures and they look them up and read them aloud on a herb, a spice, a fruit, a Bible, food, or plant. And so the last time we did the pomegranate, and their assignment was to go on the way home at the grocery store and get one. And I explained about this little top that kind of looks like a crown sometimes, depending on how it's blossomed out. We cut it open, and we talked about the different ingredients in it. It has the skin, the seed, and the jelly around it. And these have different nutrients in them, each of these three things. And they got to sip some pomegranate juice, and they got to hear what different nutrients were in each ingredient in the pomegranate, and also sip some pomegranate tea. And the tea is made from the leaves. And then read all the scriptures that if there are too many scriptures, we would just read one each, and then I would tell them to look the rest up of where pomegranates were mentioned in the Bible. And so I had just used this homeschool aspect to go with the Bible study, because every week we had been just reading a chapter in the Bible or one verse each, and they were supposed to discuss it, what they had read, and try not to get too far off in their conversation, to get off track, and just study what those few scriptures we were reading were all about. But I always like to start out with something like this. And then one week we did figs. And so we got to study the fig tree and why it was such a terrible thing when a fig tree withered, and why it had to be cut down. And so what the spiritual application was. And then I had found the Twinings fig tea. Now these teas are not made with the actual fruit, they're made with the leaves. So the flavor was so totally different, but they all got to have a little sip, a little sample of this. And each time they come, we did olives and olive oil, and they had olive leaf. You can get olive leaf tea. And just went through, first of all, we show where it is in the Bible, where it's mentioned. Then I will read to them off my little phone what the nutrients are in them, and what the benefits are, and what all these fruits and spices and herbs are used for medicinally or nutritionally. And so we also did all the spices. We've done many herbs. We did the bitter herbs, and we found teas for every one of them, even at your local grocery store. It's amazing how many teas are available from those things mentioned in the Bible. And so, let's see, what else was I going to tell you today? Let me see if I can get my notes out and actually read them. Also, okay, so now you're all ready. You're all dressed. You're all dolled up. You're ready for this wonderful job. And don't worry about whether or not other people are, doing anything at home. I have learned one thing. Thank you for your comments, by the way, because they give me ideas for subject matter. And I have learned I want to train everybody to do work in the house and to at least pick up after themselves, but not to depend on them too much to do things, because they don't always do it right. They don't always do a good job, and I'm real particular about it. And this is my domain. This is my castle, and I want to guide and guard it, and I want to have things a certain way. So if someone volunteers to do something, I wouldn't be comfortable if someone in the family said, I'll clean your fridge, because I have my way of doing that, and I don't want them throwing out stuff, and I don't want them keeping stuff either. So, I'm the one that knows what date everything went in there. I'm the one that knows whether I want to keep something or not. And that is one of the problems with maybe having a maid or somebody to come and clean house. You're the only one, at least I'm the only one in my home, that knows how I really like it and how to get into the corners and everything. And so So don't worry if people don't give you a hand, because then you can do it the way you want to do it. And if some of them, I'm talking about older people. I'm not talking about the opportunity for your child to learn at your elbow or learn by your side. You're allowed to ride herd on all of them, because we're supposed to be learning side by side how to care for the family dwelling. And so I do these for preparation. Besides getting ready, I do these exercises, and I always like to look up for standing exercises. That way I don't have to put my exercise clothing on, and I can just do it in my dress or skirt and still have my apron on. And they're standing exercises, usually stretches. And so when I do these, I read. I find the ones that show the pictures or the drawings, and then the instructions, because I can't follow videos very well. And they always say, well, by now you should be getting an exercise high. Well, when you do your own kitchen, or you clean your own bathroom lovingly, and you add all the finishing touches, and you make it like a luxury place, you get to the point where you'll reach a kitchen high, or you reach a homemaking high. It's just like exercise. After a while, the first few grueling moments are not pleasant maybe, but after a while there's some kind of satisfaction to it. And I would like to encourage you not to make homemaking into a grim job that must be done, not into an unpleasant task. And a lot of it is our attitude. And probably if you've had a mother that didn't like housekeeping and that just made her grumpy, and she just screamed at everybody and made them all clean up, that wasn't really any fun, was it? And sometimes we get those habits, but let's not do that, because it's a privilege to be at home. And I always thought, if you worked for someone outside the home, you could lose your job by being having a bad attitude. What about the home? You can actually lose your grip on your life and on your home by having a bad attitude. After a while, somebody's going to say, you might as well just go out to work, because we can't stand you at home. So make sure that you don't turn it into a grim job and making life unhappy for everyone. Remember the poem I read to you some time ago, where it said, her household motions light and free. And it was a poem about this woman that went around cleaning house, but no one knew she was doing it. It was just a natural, graceful household motions, like some kind of they said it was just like a dream, to watch her, because you didn't know. And I've known women like this, where they're pleasant and everything, but when they got up, they'd pick up a book or a magazine and straighten it out, and they just couldn't help themselves. And if they got up to go and put something in the sink in the kitchen, they would do something else while they were there, and they're enjoying it. And it was just that's how they kept going, and that's what they like to do. And so, stealth sip here. And so, her household motions light and free. So, do some stealth homemaking, stealth cleaning. I told you about my stealth sipping, and I will include a picture of a place I went outside and just to myself had a sip of some of these new teas that I've been buying that are herbal and I don't actually care for, so I just want to try them, just a sip. And no one knows, and no one can see me. The idea is to go somewhere to do something and no one else knows you're doing it. And so what about stealth homemaking, stealth cleaning, stealth organizing, and just being pleasant and not making a big announcement or a martyr of yourself, and just acting like it's I heard somebody say, what did you do today? And she said, oh, nothing. And I said, don't tell them you don't do anything, but don't say, I cleaned the toilet. Just say everything. Or everything you can think of. I've been very busy, but you don't have to tell them every detail, and you don't have to say nothing just because you don't want to say, some of these unpleasant jobs you've done. And the idea, of course, is to be very dignified and gracious about the home. Now, some of you can get pretty frustrated or resentful because we're in this position where we have so much that we have to do. And I used to get like that because, as you know, I like fabrics and I like design and textiles, and I got to looking years ago at and I love coats, and I want to know how to make them. And I got to looking at royalty around the world and the coats that they wear, and found out they weren't actually coats that they took off when they entered into a room when they were doing social work of any kind. They were actually dresses that looked like coats, and they're lined so that they're warm when they're outside, but when they get in to a room, they don't take them off. That way it's not awkward, So I was looking at all these coats and loving looking at them, and looking at the buttons, and looking at the everything that went with them, and admiring this clothing that royal women were wearing. And then I got to watching where they were when they were wearing these coats, and how they went to this one institution and they signed something, and went to another institution and did something else. And I was standing there with this big pile of laundry thinking, I'll bet they don't have to do this. Well, then it started to creep up on me, this feeling of resentment. But here's the thing, is that these people that we feel don't do anything, they often don't have any choice about the way they live. They have to go to work and do this, and they don't have choices about whether to get up and go or not. And there's a lot of things that they don't have a choice about, but we do. And we do have more of a choice of how we're going to do this, and how we're going to manage our lives and manage our homes. And also, we wouldn't want their lives just because we don't want to do the laundry or something else. We wouldn't want their lives because they have no control at all of their lives. Even the clothing they wear is chosen for them. And we truly are the ones with the freedom. We decide when we're going to get up in the morning, what time we're going to start work, when we're going to have our cup of tea. That's all decided for these other people. And even a man in a family who has to go to work every day, he often has no choice about it. And so we've got to really curb our feelings of resentment, because it means you get to control it yourself. You get to decide how beautiful your kitchen will be. You get to add all the extra things. You get to stand back and say, it is good, it looks good. So this also could be a subject that could be explored quite a bit more. And I do want to move on to some other things right now. And I did have a note here called Don't Let Their Gloom Rub Off on You. Because the homemaker, she's more pliable and malleable and sympathetic. And it's very easy to let the world's problems get in on you. And pretty soon you don't know whether you ought to bake bread. Well, there might not be a tomorrow because, the news is forecasting all this disaster and everything. You can't do that because you let people, or maybe someone has made a wrong move in their life. Someone close to you or someone you like, or maybe a relative or something, and they're just making the wrong decision in their life, and you grip your throat because it's so distressing. You have to keep going, and that's one of the wonderful things about these stretch exercises is no matter what the world is doing, and anything, no matter what is going on in your life or the world, you get up, you get all dressed up, you do your stretch exercises, you do your prayers, you take your cup of tea, you make your list. And if you have that, see, we didn't grow up with those kind of rituals, but our grandmothers did, and our great-grandmothers did. They just had rituals that they followed. We weren't taught those. Many of us spent most of our time in institutions, gone to public school, and it wasn't bred into us from the home. So consequently, when a problem came along, the women in my generation just had meltdowns or just cracked up. And so we have to ignore all that and go on with a little routine, because they're always, it's like Chicken Little, the world is, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And if we stop for every one of those things and we let their gloom rub off on us, then it can it depresses your heart, your blood pressure, everything. It is so bad for you that we can't get anything done, and we can't let our light shine. We can't let the glory of our home and the warmth of our home radiate to anybody, because like that thing I have on my page of my blog, her presence lights the home. Your present can't light the home if you're letting the world's gloom rub off on you. Just laugh at it and ignore it and move on. Even the Bible says God laughs at their folly. And also to have something that you like to look forward to. Like every week I look forward to finding a new subject or food or something to present to these few ladies that come. But if they didn't come, I'd find something else to do, like my stealth sipping. I've got that going on, and my fog fashions, and thinking of new things new ways that I want to make my rooms more efficient and effective. I've got all kinds of ideas of what to do with them, and ways to use old things and make them new again, and just the challenge of outwitting the system, outwitting everything. And it's just like all these people that stayed home during captivity. They figured out wonderful ways to blossom and to become artists, and they finally had time to write their novels. And so it's very important not to let the world's gloom rub off. If you're a homemaker, it's so important. Our type of people used to be a protected group of people. They would not let the homemaker become upset. There were poems about it. In fact, Edgar Guest wrote one to men back in the 1940s. I did read this to you, called Leave It at the Door, and about a man who's coming home from that grueling world of work and all the bad language and all the bad attitudes and the roughness and the rudeness and the crudeness. And in this poem, he said, leave it at the door and don't sully the minds of that precious mother homemaker and the children. And then cleanse yourself of that, cleanse your soul of it, and then come in. And so we used to be a protected society, and we can do that again. We can protect ourselves again from it. And so before I go too much further, now let me just look at my notes again, and you keep working, okay? And if you're new here, please click the link in the description box below and go to my blog where I have embedded this so you can see the pictures that go with it and a summarization. And also ring the bell there on the channel, because then it will notify you, I guess, on your device when I have posted again. And when there is a video, there'll always be a post, because that's what the videos are for. They're for my posts. And so now this word resentment, it really started to stick in my craw, because I thought, you know what? How would you teach someone I've been reading this book here. Goodness, where is it? It's called Stepping Heavenward, about a young girl, starts out around 15 and talks about all her struggles with her own self and her character. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to write a story? Let's say, how would you explain resentment to a young person? And resentment, you would have to make up a story. And Jesus often used stories to illustrate a point. That's what parables were, earthly stories with heavenly meanings. And they illustrated the point. And so why not write a story about someone who developed resentment through a series of happenings, developed a resentment and forgot her goal and forgot her talents and forgot her dignity and forgot to live up to the high calling of the prize of Christ Jesus, and forgot and just started to focus on what someone else wasn't doing, and how she had too much heaped on her, and then compared maybe to when she came out of the resentment, how much more talent she had, how much more she could do, and how much happier she felt. And it's like I said, without the resentment, then you get a natural, like an exercise high, you get a home living high without that. As a matter of fact, years ago when Fascinating Womanhood first came out, one of the first things that in the first lesson that the teacher would always say is, before you get started in this course, you're going to have to give up some things. And we'd all be looking around, and one of them was resentment. And it never occurred to some of us you could give up something like that. And it was how to give up resentment. And also, if you are a person that didn't have a life where you were guided properly and you just fell into all kinds of mishaps and mistakes in your life, you still can teach the next generation not to do that. You can use your story to spare them. And too many times people have said, well, you shouldn't tell me to dress modestly or not hang around with the wrong crowd. Look what you did. But you're not being hypocritical if you've turned away from that. If you've got yourself on course again, and if you're headed in the right direction and you're following good principles and you've developed better character, you're not being a hypocrite if you teach someone against something that you did. And yet some people won't accept it unless it's from a person who's absolutely had a perfect life. The other thing is, if you've had I was thinking about this with this word resentment. There used to be books and stories written about this way back, in the 1800s. I had reproduction copies of the first McGuffey readers, and about people who were resentful and how they had to learn their lesson. And there was one sorry story in it from the 1800s about a boy who didn't want to be in the family and cooperate with them, and he was being unkind to his brothers and sisters, and he was not being grateful, and he wasn't doing his share of the work and everything, and so he decided he would just go outside and not cooperate with his family. And as I recall, the story was that he got hungry and he started looking in the windows, and he saw his sister eating something, and he saw his mother preparing food, and he'd go around from window to window, and he'd see this happy family. They were all happy, and realized by looking in on the life that he'd left, how he had left happiness and how he himself might have been messing up that happiness. It's quite an interesting story, and I couldn't tell you exactly which McGuffey reader it was in, because those books were republished year after year, and the ones in 1836 and a little while after were pretty good. But when it got closer to the 1870s, they got just not as good. They were more Christian in the beginning and had good values in them. That's all I can say. I don't know much about it. Those of you who have those, you'll know what I'm talking about. And another thing, we've talked a lot about character in these broadcasts, because I had this book by Linda Lichter called Simple Social Graces, or The Benevolence of Manners, and she mentioned in there that when speech deteriorates, when people quit being polite and courteous with their words, with the way they speak, when they begin, even when they begin to grumble, and even when they begin to complain, not necessarily a foul speech, but just, when their speech just kind of deteriorates, that's when other things, the manners start deteriorating. And she traced it, this is what her theory was, that when the speech deteriorates, Then the manners deteriorate. Then the laws deteriorate. Then standards and many things deteriorate, and the clothing deteriorates. I mean, I'm talking about the modesty and the styles and the dignity of everything deteriorates, and then the products deteriorate. She started it out with speech, and you can understand that because so many times in the Bible it talks about the words that you speak and how they're like a fire, and how hard it is to control them once they're out. And so I wanted to mention that because this comes under the subject of resentment, and it's very easy for a woman at home to become resentful. But I found for myself, now remember, don't do what I do, everybody's different, but for myself, I find that the resentment dissipates once I think I would rather do it myself. I want to do it myself because I want to do it the way I want, and I don't quite trust anybody else to do it properly. Now, every now and then, someone will offer to sweep for me or straighten something out, and they'll do a good enough job that I can be relieved of that for a while. And I always remember the lady that told me that her 5-year-old wanted to help when they were getting ready for dinner, and someone was coming over and he wanted to help, so she let him. And she said he didn't get into the corners and he didn't quite do a good job on everything, but it was enough to get by, to give her some relief, and it was very helpful. So if someone wants to help, fine, if you trust them. I don't want too many people helping me. I let my descendants and my daughter help me, but other people don't quite know where everything goes, and they don't have the same standards as I do. And it's just up to you whether you want someone to help or not. But you can satisfy a lot of the resentment by thinking what a privilege it is to do it completely yourself, because then it's you make the decisions and it's up to you how things are. And there's nothing worse than going behind someone and having to redo it all. Now I want to read to you from Tea with Jane Austen by Kim Wilson, because I want to make this as pleasant as I possibly can. The light is fading here, but the important thing is hopefully you'll be able to hear me. And it's called Tea al fresco, meaning tea outdoors, and so I want to read it to you. And there's a quote here by an author, Anna Maria Bennett, 1789. And remember that Jane Austen books were written in the 1780s, or somewhere between 1776 and 1780 or 1800. And so here's the quote. He invited us to take our tea in a small summer room on the brink of a delightful river which rolls its crystal waves along several miles of green enameled banks, and is the same that passes by the Hermitage. Look at this. Look at these words. On the brink of a delightful river. I just love this word combination, and it's not a common, What is it? There's common phrases that people say, and it's even right, that you get tired of, like it was mind-boggling, or it was this, or this was that. But this is something different you don't hear a lot. The brink of a delightful river, which rolls its crystal waves. How many times have you sang songs in church about the crystal river? Which rolls its crystal waves along several miles of green enameled banks. Now, hopefully no one thinks that's a bank with the greenbacks, the green American dollar bills, and is the same that passes by the Hermitage. Even at home, the British enjoyed taking their tea away from home by drinking it out of doors. And that's what I'm doing with the stealth sipping, because they won't let me stealth camp because I'm so vital. But and I watch all the stealth camping videos. I find them so amusing. And so I have a picture for you of my last stealth sip adventure, and I went outside and did it. As the weather gets more inclement, I may find places indoors. The whole point of it is to go and quietly have a sip of tea and not let everybody know about it, just you, and usual in unusual places. And you can check back on previous posts on my blog for pictures of this and how I do this. Most of the great estates in Jane Austen's time included extensive pleasure grounds in addition to their farms and other more mundane areas. There, the owners and their guests could take tea or pass an agreeable hour in the many pleasant walks that wound their way through artistically arranged groves of trees and shrubberies and flower gardens, and rustic seats innumerable, which Mary Crawford wishes for in Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park is not one of my favorite novels of Jane Austen, and perhaps as my mind gets more mature and I develop better character, I may be able to appreciate it. Fashions in landscaping had moved away from the rigid symmetry of previous generations, inspired by landscape painting and the new taste for the romantic in literature. Natural became the must-have look. Landowners spent huge sums improving their estates to fit the new styles. Now, this might be interesting to people who like to watch videos about old architecture and ancient civilizations that are surfacing, and new discoveries of cities and of times past, and historical things like that. It says they diverted streams, created lakes, and moved entire hills in a display that suggests some estate owners may have had too much time on their hands. But when the dirt and debris had finally cleared away, the results were delightful. Well, that might explain a lot about how people discover some of these things, maybe even in their own villages, that there was some kind of a landscaping nearby, and they start digging around and finding that there was an arrangement, and this tells more about it. Pemberley, Mr. Darcy's estate in Pride and Prejudice, is improved, but tastefully. I'm going to turn the light on. Among other features, a stream of some natural importance was swelled into greater, but without any artificial appearance. Its banks were neither formal nor falsely adorned. Elizabeth Bennet, and presumably Jane Austen, approves. She had never seen a place where natural beauty had been so little counteracted with by awkward taste. Don't you remember in the movie she said, "I've never seen a place so happily situated"? We don't use that expression very much about the house and its situation, where it is situated, where it is sitting, and the gardens around it. We don't think much about that. But as a homemaker, it is such a nice thing to think about, especially in the areas that are the most laborious for you, the ones that take up most of your time, your kitchen, your bathroom, the common living spaces, and the laundry room. It's important that those places are happily situated, and I have seen some really pretty laundry rooms, and nice that people are designing it now, realizing that there are going to be human beings in there, and they need to have dignity, and they need to have light, they need to have windows, they need to have storage spaces, they need things to be beautiful, not just some dark place where there is a grueling job to be done. And I did warn you, I hope, at the beginning of this video, not to make the homemaking grueling and unpleasant for yourself and for everyone else. And I think it starts with getting dressed up, because that changes your mind a little bit. Plus your stretch exercises, those do great things for how you feel about life and how you feel about your work. The features of these improved landscapes were laid out in a circuit. You know, it looked like a circuit. It was always a circle and had these little knobs and things on it. When you're looking at the ancient, looking from the sky at ancient circuit, where they had a garden and a landscape. Very interesting. The features of these improved landscapes were laid out in a circuit with the paths cleverly planned to lead strollers along to each new point of interest or scenic view. Classical temples, tea houses, grottos, hermitages, and artificial ruins, fashioned to look as though they had been there forever, were carefully placed in a landscape to give the impression of natural occurring beauty. However, I suspect that a lot of these things were already there, and they weren't artificial ruins. There probably were some real ruins. In Sense and Sensibility, Marianne Dashwood, mourning in the best sentimental heroine style for the dishonorable Willoughby. That's another subject I want to discuss with you, about her getting carried away with Willoughby, and she thought he was so wonderful. She wasn't even looking at his character, and where there was a finer man nearby that wasn't as charming, but had more steadiness of character and more honesty. And I didn't mean to stop this landscape story or this tea story and start talking about that, but do you remember, I'm just talking like I would to my children. Do you remember this movie that I liked so much called Princess Cut, about a diamond engagement ring that was in a shape called Princess Cut, and how this girl was so hoping that she would be married someday, and she was looking at rings, and she thought it would be meaningful if a man would want to get married, and of course that's natural for all young women to want to get married, and she her mother didn't really approve of this young man that she had her hopes on. The family wasn't real enthusiastic about him, let's say. So her mother said, well, what do you like about him? And she says, he's cute and he's funny. He's real smart. And didn't mention any qualities that would make for a good home, or a good match at all. And unfortunately, these poor girls aren't taught about character. They're not taught about knowledge and virtue and good things, helpfulness and good works and loyalty and things like that. They think, oh, if they're funny and they're cute and they're real smart. And so here we see in Sense and Sensibility, hundreds of years earlier, is the same story of Marianne Dashwood. She's just broken-hearted. She even got sick, I think, didn't she, because of Willoughby? It says she steals away through winding shrubberies to a distant eminence, where from its Grecian temple her eye, wandering over a wide tract of country to the southeast, could fondly rest on the farthest ridge of hills in the horizon, and fancy that from the summits Cum Magna might be seen. That was where his aunt lived. Guests meandering through the gardens and groves could stop to enjoy each vista or monument, or to chat with the hermit hired specifically to live in the hermitage. When tired, they rested on seats well shaded and sheltered, like Fanny Price's bench in Mansfield Park. Now, I did like Fanny Price in Mansfield Park. For refreshment, they might take tea at the tea house or in an arbor. So that's the way I have arranged all of the rooms in almost all of the rooms in my house, where someone could, if they wanted, get away by themselves and take tea or whatever refreshment they wanted by themselves. It's all there. We don't have to go in the kitchen and let everybody know what you're doing. Some landowners even kept small dairies in the grounds for themselves for that purpose. In fine weather, people might take their regular evening tea in the tea house, that would be outside on the property somewhere, or hold private concerts or other elegant entertainments there. And that reminds me of homeschooling. Several of the things we did, it's always good to learn to do everything that you can get out there, a concert, a fashion show, a book report, a book signing, anything you can do here in your house. And it's just almost sublime the way you can do it. So even if I'm not suggesting everybody be isolated or keep their kids totally isolated, but it's good to know how to do it. And sometimes I'd teach my children how to take those cards, write little books, even if they were just pictures, and then we would have book signings, we would have book reports, and just the pleasure of doing these things. And they also had their musical concerts right here, and we served tea, and we had dinner theater, and in our own home with them. These are really important to learn to do things on your own property. So here it is. In fine weather, people might take their regular evening tea in the tea house or hold private concerts or other elegant entertainment there. Now, we had singings. We had our own singings. We had speech night. We just had a lot of fun and enjoyment of these things. And of course they had to research it and figure out what they were doing, accompanied by tea and other refreshments. And it says, in Emma, the Martins, Yemen farmers are swept up too in the craze for a la mode landscape features. Harriet Smith, who is nothing if not easily impressed, is delighted with their very handsome summer house, large enough to hold a dozen people, where some day next year they were all to drink tea. Isn't that wonderful? It's probably not up to General Tilney's standards, but it's a start. Now, she has a chapter here, Tea on the Road, and I'm reading from Kim Wilson's Tea with Jane Austen. Tea on the Road. I always enjoyed that scene in Wives and Daughters where Lady Harriet, is her last name Cumnor? She was taking Molly around and introducing her to all her friends, kind of to show that she approved of Molly and didn't approve of the gossip that was going on around her. And someone brought her a cup of tea in her carriage. She had a sip and gave it back. They took the tray away. And I do know a young lady who has a basket in her car with everything, so that if she gets stuck somewhere and has to sit in her car and wait, or if she's somewhere too early, or in some reason she gets delayed, and she can go to her car and she can fix herself some tea, and she even has some books to read. By Jane Austen's day, traveling was not nearly the hardship it had been for her grandparents' generation. The main roads were generally much improved by new methods of road building, and most remained passable in all but the worst weather. Off the main highways, travel remained chancier. Carriages might be overturned, as happens to the Parkers in Sanditon, if they ventured too boldly down a mired or rutted country lane. But, at least, highwaymen were no longer quite the ever-present danger. Still, traveling remained an exhausting business. Riding in a carriage was considered exercise, perhaps because it sometimes required real effort to stay in one's seat. Indeed, carriage travel was often downright bone-jarring. Stagecoaches were particularly uncomfortable, with passengers crammed tightly inside or on top according to their ability to pay. Regardless of their mode of travel, they often arrived at their destination weary, cold, and feeling rather battered. That's such an interesting story, in these coaches that just battered them around, jostled them around, and then they had to arrive somewhere where they wanted a hot cup of tea. What a wonderful thing to provide for a traveler. Traveler's tea. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Here in Oregon, we've got all these treacherous passes from one side of the state to the other. Wouldn't it be nice after you've passed that, I call it the white knuckle passes, where you're hanging on to the steering wheel with white knuckles, getting through these passes, especially in winter. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to stop for traveler's tea just for some kind of relief? And that is the advantage of learning how to take your tea and, make up a basket of stuff where you can provide it for yourself. It's not quite the same as arriving at an inn, though. Regardless of their mode of transport, travelers often arrived at their destination weary, cold, and feeling rather battered. Jane Austen usually enjoyed her journeys, but Mrs. Austen, like many others, seems not to have borne traveling well. As Jane noted, my mother began to suffer from the exercise and fatigue of traveling so far, and she was a good deal indisposed. Often the first, and sometimes the only refreshment travelers called for upon arriving at their destination was tea, which one author of the time called that best of all traveling liquors. Jane agreed. We drank tea as soon as we arrived, and so ends the account of our journey. A hot drink with a little sugar, just the thing after an exhausting trip. But I found that because I do serve teas here, Americans don't care for anything in their tea. They want their tea plain, no milk, no sugar. Some of them will put some honey in it, but generally that is why they're so particular about the kind of black tea they drink, because they're going to taste every bit of it, and none of it's going to be covered up with anything else. So that is why Yorkshire Gold is so popular here. And I must emphasize it's Yorkshire Gold, not Yorkshire tea. And the Yorkshire tea is totally different. So here's one that I'm really enjoying called Tea for the Stranded. And then I want to talk to you about one other thing. And maybe I have already said it here in this broadcast, but we'll just repeat it, Tea for the Stranded. Some travelers, unfortunately, did fail to reach their destinations. In the novels that Jane Austen and her contemporaries read, gently bred, refined heroines and heroes regularly find themselves stranded in backwater country villages where the finer things in life are clearly unknown and where they often have trouble even making themselves understood. Obviously, they require tea, but whether they receive it or not seems to depend on the author's view of country life. Villagers are frequently portrayed either as simple country folk who are good because they are simple, or as rustic idiots who are just plain simple. The first are naturally acquainted with tea, as all good people are. The others are either ignorant of tea or scornful of city ways. The good cottage dweller is portrayed as openly welcoming of weary travelers she has never met before, and understanding of the true noble nature of the heroine or hero, even if he or she is temporarily in distressed circumstances. I need to remember this because I do have visitors who come from a long ways away and drop by for tea, and I guess because our cars are comfortable and our roads are smooth, even though she came from 20 miles away or 30 miles away, I don't think how relieving this must be for her to have a hot cup of tea served graciously, noiselessly, and pleasantly and kindly, how much that means to her. The woman and her cottage are invariably clean and tidy, and tea is readily available. The kettle was on the fire, tea things set, everything prepared for her guests by the hospitable hostess. The morning sun now came, shining across the face of the old woman as she sat knitting. And this is from a book called The Absentee by Maria Edgeworth, 1789. The rustic cottage dweller presents a different face to the stranded traveler. She is comically ignorant and sometimes unhelpful and disrespectful. Typically there is no tea to be had. Finding that she had no alternative but that she must remain where she was till the morning, she asked the woman if she could make herself a cup of tea. "Yes, to be sure, I always keep sage, balm, and mint, and them sort of herbs." "Herbs!" exclaimed Mrs. Freakley. "Why, woman, I am not in a fever. I don't want herb tea." "We never use anything else here," replied the woman. It has not got none of that sort of gentlefolks' drinks as they buys at the shops." And this is written from Lovers and Friends by Anne of Swansea in 1821. In each novel, tea is used by the author as a sign of character. To know and approve of tea aligns one with civilization, and by implication, I would think it would align you with hospitality these days. Now, there are a lot of people that don't like tea, but I always offer something else. And I say we can still be friends. That's one of my sayings. I would like you all for your homework assignment to make a list of your own sayings and buy yourself a pomegranate. Those who spurn tea are considered backwards and unenlightened, and at best their rejection of it may be a sign of doubtful morals. It's hard to argue with such logic. Feeling myself weary, and my spirits from their unusual exertions nearly exhausted, I accosted a poor woman who was placing her spinning wheel at the door of a hut that could hardly be distinguished by the name of the house. I entreated she would suffer me to rest and get me a dish of tea. Well, in the old days, the dish didn't have, the tea cup did not have a handle on it, because it was considered that you wouldn't grasp it until it was cooled off enough to hold with both hands. Now, there's just one more thing I want to talk about, and it might not be pleasant, and I hate to end the last 5 minutes this way because I want you to go away feeling better, but it is making, and it is to young people, if you are at home with your parents, to be reassuring about your values and your behavior, that it is in alignment with what your parents want for you and have so carefully instilled in you. And I think it's really important. I don't know if any of you older ladies have watched this film, Our Mutual Friend, from the book by Charles Dickens. And years ago I watched it and I thought, what is the point of that particular scene? And now I know. There was a scene in there of there was a man who had a particularly vengeful character, and his name was Mr. Headstone, and he was the headmaster of a school. But he got it in his head that this lady that he had asked to marry him, she had turned him down, and he got very vengeful and resentful about it. And she had to flee. She had to go somewhere away from him so he could not find her. And a lawyer had helped her. And so in order to find her, he began following this lawyer around to see if he would contact her, because he knew where she was. And so the lawyer confessed that he was having fun with it, and so he was just leading this man all through the London streets at night, back and forth around, and then going back to his home. And he'd look back, and this crazy man was following him, and he was just torturing him. He was just leading him on and torturing him. And so in family relations, and I want to especially talk to the teenage and young adults at home, or who maybe aren't at home but are still under their parents' responsibility, not to do that, not to torture your parents' feeling at ease by not assuring them. And one of the things that that some people do, is they don't answer a text, they don't answer a phone call, or if their parents want to talk to them, they'll say, well, I don't believe the same thing anymore. And then that sends the mother and father into tears, and all they have to say is, to reassure them, is to say, I won't drive. Here's another sore spot. I won't drive at night. I won't drive in the dark. I don't want many of my descendants driving in the dark. It sometimes happens that the dark comes faster than they realize it, but I just don't want them driving. I didn't even want them driving, but I'm not in control of that. But I don't want them to drive in the dark. So when they call, I say, are you going to be driving in the dark? And they say, Mima, don't worry. We aren't going to intentionally drive in the dark. We know you don't like it. We'll try to get there before dark. And that puts my mind at ease. I can actually go take a nap, and it doesn't keep me in a tizzy, all spun out, and my heart racing and that sort of thing, because they put me at ease. And they said, we believe the way you do. We don't want to drive in the dark, and we won't do it. But then there are others who will say to their parents, well, I drove in the dark because time just got away from me. And they don't reassure their parents, and they're torturing. They almost don't realize that they're torturing their parents. And it's like this lawyer that was getting a great glee of leading this poor man that was already kind of mentally off all up and down the streets while he was pretending that he was going to go see this girl that this teacher actually wanted to know where she was, and every night he would follow him around, and I just thought that was kind of cruel. I don't know about this Dickens guy, do you? But he was writing about real life. There are people like that, and I wanted to warn you, young people, not to be like that. If your parents have instilled really good values in you, don't be driving at night. Don't go out at night. Don't be with a certain person or a certain crowd of people. We're not sold on you being with that person. They have dubious character, or, I think that it's really important that you reassure them and say, I agree, I won't do that. And don't be like the lawyer who just led this guy up and down the streets pretending he was going to go to this person's house. Now, ladies, I hope that you have got a lot done while you have listened, and I really appreciate your coming and the time you spend here, and hope that you didn't just sit and watch it. But I want to say goodbye, and God bless you. Thank you for all you do for me. Thank you for your prayers, and stay close to Christ. Bye.